Greetings, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, From Outdated to Outstanding, Modernizing Parks Through Proactive Asset Management. My name is Emily Tipping. I'll be your moderator today. I'm the editorial director for Recreation Management Magazine. We are a publication going to managers of recreation, sports, and fitness facilities. We encourage you to sign up for a free subscription by visiting our website at recmanagement.com. I think that you're going to find today's topic super useful. In our most recent industry report survey, we found that the majority of people, more than half, named staffing issues, followed closely by equipment and facility maintenance as the top challenges in their facility, more than double the result for any other challenge that we listed in the survey. And I think that today's topic will help all of you who are having problems with maintenance issues and staffing issues, help get on top of some of those problems. So without further ado, I am going to turn things over to our presenter today, Cameron Cutler, Senior Product Manager with AssetWorks. Take it away, Cameron.
All right, thank you, Emily. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. And as you mentioned, our discussions with different organizations that we work with on a regular basis and ones that are looking to do things like this absolutely that's the hot topic. So before we get into that too far, I'll give you a little background about myself, just to so you know who is talking here. Cameron Cutler, Senior Product Manager at AssetWorks, over the enterprise asset management portion of what we do. And that, of course, includes parks and rec, parks and facilities, bridges. There are several things that we do, but any way that we organize and keep track of assets. And a little bit backing up just a little bit about AssetWorks itself. AssetWorks has been around for a little bit over 40 years, works with over 1,000 different private and public sector organizations. And our main goal is to find solutions for asset management for those organizations. So a lot of steeped tradition, knowledge from the AssetWorks company. And then today we're going to dive into, like you said, some of these things about modernizing, about keeping track, for revitalizing, all the things that happen that are pain points for organizations as we go on. And then back to about myself. I live in Northern Idaho. Spend a lot of time, I said, live and play here. Wonderful place for us to be in the summertime outside and doing things. We access and enthusiastically use lots of parks and are familiar with, definitely with the ones in our area. And as we travel around, always find time to do that. I grew up in Southern Idaho, in the Boise area, and loved always being able to use the great park system there as well. So I have some personal connection in how parks and seeing them over the years, and then also just from a day-to-day use. Family of 4, my wife and 2 kids, 1 still at home, 1 off at college. So technically it's 3, but the 4th one is off doing her thing. So we enjoy our time here as well. And then just from outside of the work and everyday things, I do spend a lot of time in parks on soccer fields as well. So that as part of the thing, I coach in high school and I coach for competitive club soccer as well. And so we spend a lot of time outdoors doing these things. So seeing some of these issues from different perspectives also comes up, but that's just a little bit of background. We love to be out on the water in the summer, like I said, love to do things, be active. But today we're going to talk about how and what we can do with parks to make them a better experience for those people in your local community. So a quick run through of what areas we want to cover in today. The importance of proactive asset management, the challenges of modernization. So we'll talk about some strategies for success. And these are all based on knowledge that we have, both from working with organizations that we do and talking with peers, with different people within the industry and what they see and what the challenges are. So we'd love to share that data and just have a consensus and share ideas with each other. And then, of course, have a case study that we'll go into that addresses some of the items that we're talking about in the first half of the presentation. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we can leverage technology, which seems to be a hot item, in particular with transitions of from paper to away to desktop computing, to portable computing, to tablets, and also within the employees, right, within these organizations, and how those are transitioning to ones that are much more expecting technology to be part of their daily work, and how that can improve and they can leverage that. So without further ado, we'll jump into a few things here and start through it. So we're jumping into importance of proactive asset management. What does that really mean to a proactive management? What are we trying to accomplish with that, right? Being able, proactive, as we know, anticipating needs, things that need to happen. In our world, that would be addressing maintenance, observing, knowing what needs to happen next and how that can happen. And it, of course, involves things like inspections, involves data analysis, involves strategic planning. These are all areas that we need to be on top of to maintain this proactive level of work. We always have the regular things that pop up that we know are going to happen, and putting those on types of schedules, being proactive about them. But then also, as we are putting together schedules, understanding, knowing what needs to happen in the future and getting those scheduled out is an important part of establishing a foundation for what we want to do to modernize. And we'll talk through this a little bit more here, but that's, those are the main areas. You're going to be talking about your inspections of items that exist, taking your data analysis, which is history, maintenance records, other things that you've done with those assets, and knowing what has happened, what needs to happen in the future. And then from a strategic planning standpoint, looking well into the future, when would that need to be replaced? If we're going to be adding a new location, or we're expanding in a location, doing some work there, what do we need to have now, or what will we need to have in the future? And that could be, as I'll go with something as basic as, we may plant a tree or several trees in a park to begin with that are very small. But if you look at that park 30 years down the road with very healthy, very large trees that are producing a lot of leaves, there's some planning that needs to happen with that asset to understand what that's going to look like 30 years in the future, what kind of maintenance is going to transition or evolve for them. So just fun things like that to look at. So let's talk a little bit about the benefits of doing this, right? First and foremost, every person with a budget that they're working with is going to definitely want to find ways that they can extend the useful life of, whether it be an item in a park or the park itself, the infrastructure and the facilities in their bathrooms, the other things, that benches, things, lighting, things that are at the park, right? How can we maintain them in a way to get the most value out of them for what the budget that we had to work with is? And of course, by doing that, we're finding ways to increase our cost savings across our budgets, which are always going to be challenged and tight for what we want to do. But by being proactive in what we're planning out, we can find ways to have cost savings within it. And of course, parks really, this is a conversation I had with a few colleagues and some organizations at a recent Parks and Rec conference, and we were talking about just some parks in general, and we all were like, we're talking about this, and someone posed the question about, well, think about a park that you growing up, and we all said, well, actually, I was already picturing in my head a park that I visited quite often, right? Do we enhance an experience within a park, in the park system, so that it becomes a memorable place for people? And we all have those that we can say, oh, hey, what was a park of your childhood? And you can pretty much picture, what the layout was, maybe some of the toys. In my case, there was a long metal slide that if you hit it the wrong time of day, it was really warm and hot. And there were different experiences that you had, but those are things that you can enhance by being proactive, right? And creating those memorable experiences for your community to have in the parks. And of course, the great thing about extending the life and being very conscious of how you're taking care of your facilities also will support many of the sustainability initiatives that you have in your community. And that's another hot topic, or another one that has a lot of attention to it, is how can we be more sustainable? How can we do things? And being proactive and doing the work and planning ahead of time definitely fits into those initiatives for sustainability.
Now we're taking a little break for some
Yes,
audience
sorry.
participation here. And we've got a question for you guys. So we would like you all to register which assets within your park system are presenting the most challenges for you. Is it the playground equipment and surfacing, keeping that playground equipment maintained, ensuring that, say, loose fill playground surfacing is properly raked back under the high wear areas? Is it park restrooms, which can be, tend to get vandalized often or just messy? Is it your waste and recycling receptacles, staying on top of emptying those and keeping things clean in your park? Is it benches and picnic tables? Or is it all of the above? Maybe it's all of the above for you. So go ahead and submit your answer to this question. And while you're doing that, I'd also like to remind you that we will have Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if you have a question for Cameron, be sure to enter it into the Q&A area, and we'll make sure to get to that at the end. All right, I see that people are answering. I'm eager to see what people have to say. I'm thinking of the park closest to me, and my suspicion is the answer there would be all of the above, because boy, that that place gets a lot of traffic. Let's see. All right.
That's a good thing. A well-trafficked park is a good thing.
It is. It's a beautiful park, and they're actually about to do some big renovations there, so they could surely benefit from this knowledge. I think they're adding a spray ground and pickleball courts, all the modern things. All right, let's see what people had to say. So 50% said all of the above. No surprise there. And another quarter are saying playground and equipment surfacing, followed by park restrooms and waste and recycling receptacles. That's real interesting. So I'm going to
benches and picnic tables, clearly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory, but sometimes some of them need to be painted every year, though, so they could be a problem. All right, Cameron, I'm going to turn things back over to you to take it away.
Great. Thank you. And this is interesting feedback, but falls pretty much in line with conversations that we have with different groups. So this is not to say that we're average, but we are definitely all seeing the same things. So let's talk a little bit about challenges of park modernization. Emily, actually, you started to talk a little bit about some of the things you observed in your own community, but we'll walk through some of those topics here just for fun. Aging infrastructure and facilities. First challenge here. And then there's a couple of questions, rhetorical questions here for us to think as we're evaluating. And remember, the topic is here, if I wanted to modernize a park, what are the steps I would have to take? So a challenge first, it's like, look at them. Now, for our marketing team and whoever put these slides together, the picture of the metal barred cone type of thing in the back, that one goes to my childhood. I think I've seen that in several parks, right? And then you're looking at, of course, the new, more accessible version of parks that we see coming up, right? So, but is it safe? Is it accessible? How's it being maintained? How can it be maintained? There's also something that needs to take into account, and that was also going to vary based on location. What might work and might be best for someone in the Northwest where I am is not necessarily going to be the exact same thing that someone in the Southeast is going to, or how they're going to treat it, right? We have that are not going to have the same winterizing protocols down there, but there's different things that happen and how the usage of that park happens. What is that life cycle of it like, and does it add to the community? So as you're thinking through, and this is of course just the first challenge that we're coming to, is for my community, how will it best be served with a modernization? Are there things within the park that can be modernized? Do we have to do an overhaul? Is it something that can be done in a more phased approach, or an upgrade for? And from this picture alone, right, there's different things for consideration. If it's a park that's in a neighborhood setting, and while when the neighborhood was built, it may have been a lot younger in population. Over time, that same population may or may not still live there. If it's my subdivision where I live, I'll call it, I live around a lot of retired families, and I'll also say that they also are great to watch over our property when we're gone. But them, right, when they were taking their children to a park when it was first built, is different than them now taking their grandchildren to the park, where accessibility may be something we think of just for maybe individuals with disabilities being able to use and enjoy the playground system, but also those things with steps, loose dirt. Some of those things can be challenging for some of those grandparents or other people that are trying to be there with them and support them. So understanding that there are different ways for, how does it add to my community, and how is it accessible for everyone, are things to take into consideration. Funding, always a fun topic. I don't think this challenge will ever go away, but it's something to look at and say, how do we overcome this? We have budgets that we work within. We will have, as a community grows, hopefully your budget is growing along with that. But what other opportunities do we have for funding, right? Are we looking, and what do we need the funding for? Are we understanding what those are? And a good rule of thumb is to say, if I listed out all the things that we need to do, how can I prioritize them? And what are the ones that are most important for the areas where we're wanting to use the funds? Is it new equipment? Is it that increased accessibility? Or is it some sustainability initiatives that we want to add to enhance the neighborhood, to enhance the community with this? And what can we do? And where can we go? Again, grants.gov is posted in here. There are several other resources. We listed that, but that is absolutely somewhere to go and say, hey, I know we have budgets, but are there other things that we can leverage to get that? And this is just looking from this side. We'll talk about some other things within the community as well, and how that might help in funding. But for the moment, we'll keep it at that. And then, of course, I would encourage anybody to network with other people, other peers, other Parks and Rec organizations that you know, and talk together to find out what might be out there for you, because sometimes there will be things that are regionally based, or there are ones that you can take advantage of. But use your other resources. Networking is a fantastic way to go about that, but to understand what some opportunities are for you out there. Don't feel limited to just what you receive as your line item in the city, the county, the state budget for what you're trying to accomplish. So historical preservation. And I would equate this in a couple ways. And I'll give an example here, but then also something to understand. And this goes back to what I was saying about me understanding that I grew up in the Boise area, and visiting a park that I utilized 30 years ago, and the park is still there. It has, of course, evolved over time. Like Emily said, there are some things like the tennis courts are being retroed for a portion of them to be into pickleball courts, because that seems to be a very popular thing, and we play that too. But then also transitions in what a playground looks like, how the grassy area is utilized, and then what things can we update, and what can we modernize to keep that going. But I think an important thing to hear is to understand, when you're doing and have a well-established location that has been at the heart of a community for a long time, to look at it and think about how can we take steps to modernize without losing the integrity or the nostalgia or the commonality, the common feel of that park that has been part of that community for a very long time. And one way to go about that too is, of course, to be very transparent with your citizens about what the plans are that you want to do. I'll take, for example, here in North Idaho where I live, we have a park that's down by the lake that, and my wife grew up in this area, I did not, but just having her tell me about how that park had always been there, how it looked, baseball fields, tennis courts, some things there. And then about 10 years ago or so, they did a very dramatic overhaul of that park, but it involved a very involved communication with the community about what they wanted to do, how they were going to go about it, what that was going to look like, and making sure that they understood that the integrity of what the park has always stood for would stay, but there was just some modernization that was going. Yeah, it was the splash pads, right? They're adding that in there. It makes sense in the summer. Even, you got a lake close by, you've got water there for the kids, you've got adding basketball courts with lights on them, but then letting them know that we were going to add lights, but we're going to make sure that they're on a timer and turn off by a certain amount of time. And then there were other things within the park that we didn't want to get rid of, meaning we had, because it's right next to some mountains and water, making sure that some of the wildlife nesting areas, that they set up some things that would be encouraging that to continue, and et cetera, right? So thinking those through. And then the other example in here was talking about New York State parks and how they had gone about celebrating not only 100 years of their state parks, but then also how they were reintroducing to a new audience in sense of what their parks are all about, and some great ideas about how can we get people into the parks and see and enjoy them and participate in what we've got going on. And a great idea, right, doing a scavenger hunt, of being able to go into those different parks and see things and learn about them, but help them to understand not only about the park, but then get some history around the park while they're there. Because a lot of us will, when we come into a new community, may understand a park from the moment we get there and forward, but may not understand of some of the legacy of what a park was about, why it's there, what it's, the importance it has to that community. And bringing those things together can really help people understand and draw them to those, and make them a more valuable part of their lives, and connect them better with their communities. Poor data quality, challenge number 4. So this gets into understanding, do we know what our assets are and what they're doing, how they've been interacted with, how we've been using them, how long they've been in service, how long we expect them to be in service, what our maintenance has looked like for them, what the cost is for a particular asset. And when I say that too, it's not only the purchase cost of something, but what is the ongoing cost of that over its lifespan? And do we have the ability to, if we're not tracking it now, to start tracking it in a way that will give us a better understanding, not only for what future costs may be as we want to include things, but also as we want to be part of this proactive maintenance, can we start to predict and understand when things need to happen to improve sustainability, to improve longevity of the things that are installed in the park, that are used in the park on a regular basis. And I love this little blurb right here that says, when data lives in a spreadsheet or disparate systems, silos can make accurate strategy planning near impossible. We all do, and all have ways to get done what we need to, and a lot of it involves spreadsheets. But what we want to look at from the challenge is there a way for us to be better in how that information is stored? And I'll use the phrase of winning the lottery, right? If someone on the staff who is maintaining a spreadsheet doing this is fortunate enough to win the lottery, there's a probability that they might just not want to be working as much anymore, right? And you lose a lot of historical and institutional knowledge from that person based on what was in the spreadsheet, or understanding seasonality when things need to happen and when they don't need to happen. But if we can do and record this data in a way that is being proactive and predictable and helping us plan into the future, then we can be more confident in what needs to happen, and we can reap the benefits of this proactiveness of the data that we have being not poor anymore, but good quality data that resides and is accessible to help us make data-driven decisions about what needs to happen and to maintain our parks and to continue to improve them. So a couple things about asset data to think about, right? If we're looking at asset inventory, and just thinking them through, what assets do you have? Where are they? What their values are? When were they built or bought? And what is their expected life cycles? These are things, if I'm looking at my assets, this is information that's going to be of utmost importance to me to start to paint a picture of what an asset looks like from the beginning to the end, where we have the opportunity to improve or keep them in good working order, stay on top of it, right? Not have to shut things down or replace things as much. And again, this moves into life cycle costs. How are you going to calculate a life cycle cost if all you have is what we put it into activity on the beginning of 2024, and until we have someone report to us that something is wrong with it, we may not address it, right? That might be a little bit of a stretch in some cases, but that's sometimes based on the number of assets that we're trying to manage, may be the way that we have to, in our current environment, have to handle things. So we need to be able to calculate life cycle costs of just how much something costs, not only from the initial purchase, but over the life cycle of the item. And again, I used trees as an example, but you could use anything. And it's not just things within a park. It may be small machinery or equipments. It could be, for example, things they use to maintain the grass areas in a park too. We have those items, and do we understand how often they need to be maintained or maintenance be done on them, what the actual costs are after purchase to keep them. This also helps us understand our budgets, and as we are being asked or addressed from our community leaders on a budget that we're having, and it's like, do we have enough to do what we want to do? Being able to paint a better picture of what our maintenance is, what our expansion might be, and how those funds are being used to work that through. And then the level of service. What level of service are you currently able to provide based on the system that you're using? If it is more of a spreadsheet approach, do you have a prioritization to understand when new maintenance requests or work orders or tasks need to be done, or it could be a regular inspection that needs to happen? How are we able to do those? What's the level of service that is expected not only from the community in terms of, it may be routes or maintenance, like it was mentioned there, garbage or public restrooms at a park, or how those are being done and what those costs are to do those routes and maintenances. And then, of course, as we're talking about the levels of service, what is the expectation and funding for those? And again, we're trying to outline the different questions here to see, how can I paint a picture of what needs to happen, what it's going to cost to do, and what we expect the outcome to be by being proactive in doing this. And then, of course, it ultimately comes down to, is the level of service meeting the needs or expectations of the users? And I would say users and community members, because we're going to have there are going to be expectations of the users being community organizations, government, different people who are funding the projects and what their expectations are. But then, of course, you're going to have the expectations of those who are the consumer of the park or the location, and how they are using it and what they expect. Are we seeing trash cans that are always full and not being maintained? Is the lawn or the bathrooms in need of some attention, right? There are different things that we need to understand and say, how can we improve those so to meet the expectations not only of our community, but also those who are supporting and funding the work that we're wanting to do. I'll turn back over to you, Emily.
All right, we've got a little more audience participation here for you to exercise your pointer finger. So this question, who are the most valuable partners in planning and maintaining your parks? Is it local citizens or Friends of the Park groups? Other local government agencies like Public Works? Is it local businesses? Or do you just not collaborate with others on planning and maintenance? And we ask this question every year in our industry report survey, and we find varying numbers of people say that they don't partner at all, but it's pretty low. Generally, not more than 15% of respondents out of around 1,000 people say they don't partner at all. The vast majority of people, all kinds of respondents, from parks and recreation to colleges and universities, YMCAs, are partnering with other people. Some of the most common partners that they will cite are things like local schools, nonprofit organizations, other local government agencies. So there's a lot of partnering that happens that can make things happen in your parks that you maybe wouldn't be capable of on your own. And I think we're going to get into that in just a minute here. But first, you can just answer this question and we'll find out what you guys have to say. Looks like we got a good number answered here. So looks like 2/3 of you are partnering with other local government agencies, such as Public Works. That's good. Around 22% not partnering with anybody. And 11% have local citizens or Friends of the Parks groups. I love that. I'd like to join one of those myself. I will turn this back over to you, Cameron, and you can keep it rolling.
Great. Thanks, Emily. All right, so we talked through some of the challenges, and again, this is just broad. There are going to be other challenges that people come up with, but I'm just trying to condense into the most common ones that we see and hear of and how those are handled. And then we can talk a little bit here about strategies for success. Again, things that have come up and we've seen and proven time and time again with organizations we worked with, but want to share with you as well. So these collaborations and partnerships. How can we be successful in that, right? How do we engage with other departments? Thinking about that, what can we do to work with other groups that are maybe connected or dotted lined into what we do on a regular basis to maintain and modernize parks, but understanding that, right? What are those other departments? And then again, local businesses and organizations. Are there things we can do with local businesses if it's feasible and if it makes sense to do different events at these locations or sponsorships or different things, right? We have opportunities here that I've seen where it may be food trucks in a certain park and they'll have a day that's set aside to do that. Or one that I thought of just thinking through, now this is, going through a little bit of, it was brought upon because of all the challenges we had with COVID and everything and distancing and things going on. But from a school organization, when my daughter was going through high school and they decided that they wanted to have the orchestra concert, but it was not feasible to have it inside. We did have a park with a band shell that's down by the lake, and they decided to have the concert, the end of year concert in that facility to do it. And I don't know that it was just brilliance in their planning, but to have that down there, to have a great sunset going behind, have the community going back and forth along the walkways and the parks and the bicycles, and then have some fantastic music being played. It absolutely was fantastic for the school and for the city and the park organization, but then also the community members that joined in, right? It created a great opportunity there for that as well. And then the other one that was listed, 11% citizens, is there opportunity for you to have regular touch points? And I'm not saying something that's overwhelming, but a quarterly or type of thing for your area to have a meeting around things that are going on in your parks, giving them a voice. I know there are groups that use other digital communications to have things reported to them. but then also having a lending ear not only for things that they have seen arise or concerns, but also as things are being planned that are for future expansions, enhancements, modernization of locations to keep them going on that. And then, of course, volunteer programs, right? Just as we have, you see as you drive down on a highway or a freeway, and you'll have organizations that are sponsoring, a portion of a road. I've seen them where a park is sponsored to have a community cleanup. In my neighborhood, we have a designated time twice a year where we actually go in and do above and beyond the regular maintenance that's done, but we take part and invest our time into cleaning up the park as best we can. Then, of course, donations and sponsorships. Are there ways that we can involve the citizens in there? You see brick walkways sometimes where people are donating money, or we have seen fences around park areas where the slats in the fence are engraven with people's names as they donate money to help support the park or the covered picnic area and things like that. Are there ways that we can drive sponsorship or further engagement from our community in those parks to help support them? This is another one for success, and I think it's really important, and we touched on it a little bit earlier as well, as a phased implementation. There are an endless list of things that we could possibly want to do to improve and modernize different parks. You can probably think just from our conversation today, as you're thinking through your own locations, things that you would like to do. But be realistic in them and say, you know what, there is only so much we can do right now. There is only so much budget to do them. There's only so many working hours in the day to do some of these things. But take and break these into smaller staggered phases that you can accomplish. Some of you will have challenges with seasonality as well, as there's only a certain number of days or parts of the year that you can do that. And then shutting down a part of a park during the prime time when it can be used is not always ideal. But finding those times that you can work on them, whether it be end of season, beginning of season, things that make sense to do that. But also taking the approach of, by doing that, being able to show a more continuous progression to what you want to do to modernize, not only from how the park or area is being used or developed, but also as you are doing that, what that maintenance, what that proactive plan you have, you're putting in place to keep the improvements you're doing as usable and acceptable to the experience that the customer is expecting, the citizens are expecting to have. And then here's a good, just broken down modernization project example that it was more of a historical location, but that of course it had some integrity to it in terms of we couldn't just flatten the ground and build up a new park that we wanted to put there, but we needed to do some things. So of course, taking that approach, right? Phase one, are we engaging not only local historians to understand what's going on, but in establishing what the priorities within that, what are the things we need to preserve? What are the most important things that make that location unique and make it what it is? And then of course, taking a look at how we're going to preserve those, how are we going to go about it? What are the infrastructure improvements we're going to do around that? Which ones are prioritized to do? And things like pathways mentioned. Lighting is a very popular and a new one that does enhance locations, especially at dusk and nighttime hours, to make them not only visually look nice, but also keep them safe and make them safe spots even in the nighttime hours. And then cultural enhancements. This, of course, is going to be predicated by your communities and what you have going on and how they're being used. But what are the things you have within that area that you're wanting to make it better? And I'll use a park here locally that had some baseball fields that were used, Babe Ruth for high school summer baseball, and taking those out was definitely an issue not necessarily an issue, but something that had to be like, hey, we can't just take those out. Those are used. That's a pastime. That's a lot of memories for people to do that. But finding out a solution is, well, we're going to move those to another location. Land was donated to put in a new park to handle the baseball fields, but then taking that land and creating a nice wide open space with fantastic covered picnicking areas and gathering areas there that could be used not only within the summertime, but then we found even that the utilization within the winter, they now are putting a seasonal ice skating rink within there, right? That draws the community into a park in the time of the year that particularly didn't get used before, and when it was a baseball field, absolutely did not. So it didn't ruin the integrity of the park. It actually probably enhanced it, but we were able to see, or I was able to witness. Didn't have any necessary direct impact on that, but seeing how that was overcome and kept the integrity of the historic nature of the area, but allowed for new modernizations to take place. And of course, community engagement. How is the area being used? Can we have things that are celebrating the history of helping people understand, like we talked before, and in how New York was using theirs, but helping people understand the history of the area, what it was done. Was it donated by someone? I'm thinking of growing up in the Boise area, right? And down along the river, and there are several, 1, 2, 3, 4, I think it's 5 now, parks that all have names of the wives of who they were donated to. Catherine Albertson Park, Ann Morrison Park, Julia Davis Park, and so on down through there, and the history behind those and the importance of those were. So making sure we have those educational workshops, using those locations, not only for events, but events that are pertain to the area, to that location itself. And then solutions around data-driven decisions. This gets really into the crux of when we're talking about proactive maintenance. What can we do? Right? Monitoring maintenance schedules and trends. Being able to have records that give you this information allows us to see, plan, make adjustments to schedules, understand what needs to be done to keep our assets, those things under our purview, in the best condition possible for what we're trying to maintain. And of course, it's not a small number of assets. And again, conducting the regular asset condition assessments, that's a tongue twister, and inspections. Being able to use that historical data to make determinations, to understand when it was brought online, when it was last serviced, are there any things that have been done to it over this period of time, so we understand when and how it may need to be replaced or what needs to happen, so that we're minimizing downtime. Having to rope off an area in a location, a park, because it finally gave up and we didn't have the chance to be proactive and just quickly replace it, versus having to do a larger replacement overhaul of a feature, or could be even just bathrooms being closed for a longer time because they weren't being serviced on a regular basis. Those are things that impact the community in terms of their satisfaction with what we're doing, and also uses up our resources in ways that keep us from being able to maintain everything we need to. Then, of course, taking our data or gathering data and then being able to integrate it using GIS mapping, visualized mapping, mobile applications technology that helps us to do and work more efficiently. Visual routing, being able to see things, touch them on a screen, open up and see the assets there, get histories from them, instead of having to work from either memory type of thing or a long paper log that may be a little bit less timely, or take a lot more time to do. And then, of course, being able to not only report those things back from our internal to gather more data about what's being done and what's been taken care of, but then also in some cases where they may be things that are brought up by the community, and being able to report back through different integrated ways to improvements that have been addressed or improvements that have been finished that we've been working on. So I want to jump into a case study really quick, just that goes through a lot of these things for this organization. And it may be a lot larger than what you are, but we can take it in terms of, divided in force or whatever, and you might get a more realistic view for where you are at. But the challenge for this particular group was that they had 400 plus parks, 120 miles of trails, and then a large number of athletic fields, play areas, et cetera. Your typical, and that was their challenge they were trying to maintain and manage. And it maybe, take that by a fourth, right? Someone you may be saying, well, we have 100 parks and 30 miles of trail, or some level of that you're maintaining. In any case, based on those are all going to have a large number of assets that you're trying to work with. And so they identify from this, like, hey, we have thousands, in their case, almost 40,000 assets that they're trying to keep track of, and those are assets that they've built a baseline. If it's not more, if it costs less than X number of dollars, we're not going to list it. We're only going to keep track of the ones above that, right? That's how they did that. But then other problems they had is like, hey, we're finding in some cases that we're duplicating either recording work, or we're going and doing something, and by the time it finally gets reported that it's done, that someone else has come and take a look at it and hands in the air. Well, someone already worked on this. Why am I being sent out here to work on it, right? And there's some duplicate work or wasted time and resources because of lack of real-time information. And then another thing this particular group's like, we would really like to be able to make sure the usability is there for both the internal office work and those in the field to be able to do the work they need, report, and be able to move forward. So what they came to up in terms of solutions is they need one system to handle all of their asset management, the ability to record tasks while in the field. So those crews, those individual workers that are out doing things, being able to record what they had done at that time instead of having to rely on memory in some cases to understand what had happened and record it back. And then also being able to use that to do some capital planning, whether it be from the initial funds we have and how we're going to use them or what we want to do, through all the way through implementation and how that looks and how those funds were spent, and being able to have that all tie back into what they've been working with in terms of assets, so that once they're done through the capital planning stage and are now active, that they don't now become part of their regularly scheduled proactive maintenance that they're doing. And the results are 40,000 for them, 40,000 assets entered. They maintain, and they're all tracked with historical data. Regular maintenance and planning is being able to be scheduled, whether it be far into the future for maybe some things that have regular inspections that need to be done, or if it's in a seasonality thing where it's a location that needs to be mowed once a week, but being able to plan those things and understand what needs to go on. And then being able, of course, to see any assets as they come online from the cradle to the grave, how they are done, and creating that history of what the expected lifetime is for it, when are the maintenances that need to happen, what the overall costs are, and get a better picture so when they're going to talk in budgets and reporting, that they have the ability to tell that story in a way that's very understandable to those who are funding. So quickly, leveraging technology. What can we do, right, to manage our systems? Or do we have a centralized data management? Or we have information that's keeping record of how maintenance is done? Do you have the ability to visualize where things are in locations on a map and being able to dive into them from this visual piece? Do we have the ability to capital plan, to take and understand a budget that's coming and how that's going to be utilized and prioritize them? And then as those are implemented, what that looks like and what the maintenance goes on from there, and how we can involve citizens from there. And of course, the mobile app for those that are in the field to be able to do things in real time away from an office location and understand that there is plenty of things that are done in paper and are done that way. But again, there is a lot of ability now within simplified use of connected and disconnected mobile apps to be able to record real time what's going on, report it back, have it stored, and not have to rely on memories and paperwork that may get rained on, may get blown away, all the fun things. And then, of course, automating processes. one of the great things about technology is that we can automate different things that happen on a regular basis, and being able to take some of those very tedious, mundane tasks out of the equation and being able to have those happen just automatically because we know of our business processes and what we do. And then, of course, being able to look at what we've done and optimize resource utilization based on what we're doing, whether it be for how we best route to get to different locations to do work, the type of labor that's required, materials, understanding those so that we can make quicker decisions and more accurate based on the information that we have. And of course, the overall in anything with this technology-wise is, are we able to use that real-time data to drive decisions, to be predictive, to prioritize what we have going on? All these things lead in a way to the modernization, not only of what we have in our parks, but how we interact with the assets that we have, and modernizing our own workflows and being able to be more proactive in understanding what needs to be done and make decisions in an easier manner. I mentioned this before, but GIS mapping, visual representation is a very handy, very useful way for us to be able to see things. If you're in a location, to be able to pull up and see, I'm here, what are the assets I have here? Can I just touch into them and know what's going on instead of having to do a long Control F search through a spreadsheet or leafing through papers to understand what something is, but being able to get that quick glance or view into what is the history, the maintenance, the things that we have going on with an asset that you're here to work on. Then, of course, being able to prioritize based on those needs, which ones need to be addressed first and what needs to be done. Those are all quick decisions we made with improvements in technology. And like I said before, mobile apps do facilitate this a lot, whether it be through a tablet or a phone or a connected device, being able to do and report back some of those basic tasks as they are done, not relying on pen and paper to do those, even tracking time and timesheets, work done against different work orders, being able to understand the labor done to do something or when it has been finished. And also from a end user citizen who may have reported something back, tying those and integrating those in so that as those are accomplished, and if there was some communication that needed to happen, that those can be live updated, email sent out, text alerts, things can be done to help proactively communicate with the community on things that have been taken care of. So quick summary, I would love to get to some questions, but I would definitely want to go through this just for the sake, and I know this will be available, at least the recording, so you can take a look at it as well. But just things to keep in mind, the importance of proactive asset management, what it does for us, the challenges in park modernization, the areas we covered in terms of aging, infrastructure and balancing, historical preservation, community resistance to change and understanding and communicating those things as we go, strategies for success that we would talk through, collaborating, working with the communities, sponsorships, holding events there, and using technology, of course, to leverage that, which is something that we do, of course, at AssetWorks on a regular basis, is how can we help leverage technology to be not only simple to use, but useful to not only office environments, but also be flexible enough to provide good, useful, meaningful technology to technicians and field workers to be able to report back and see not only what they've done, but see what's next for them to do. All right, Emily, with that, I'll turn it over to you for some questions and answers. I kind of blitzed through that because I know we're on time, but happy to answer questions that have come up.
All right, folks, if you have any questions for Cameron, please go ahead and enter them in that Q&A box or in the chat box. I'll keep an eye on that space as well. We do have one question to start. How can centralized data management optimize resource utilization? Maybe could you give an example of that?
Sure. So centralized data, and we'll just say centralized data management, like a source of truth for everything. We find, and this is, I'm going to use an experience of different customers that we've talked to, is the challenge is, hey, we have and are maintaining this spreadsheet over here about the different part of a park that we're doing. But then we have another group over here that is maintaining something separate to that, and it's just, you know, the left and the right hand not talking to each other kind of a situation. Being able to centralize that not only provides a shared look that they can still pull and look at what they need to be and what's most pertinent to them, but being able to have that full picture helps to understand that, oh, this is being worked on. And I'll give an example of a group is going out to work on something and has shut down that area to do it, but another group was coming out and was planning to mow the lawns, right, or maintain the grounds of somewhere, but couldn't work on a good portion of the area because it had been blocked off for some other work that was being done. Now, in those instances, if we could have those more centralized in communication and understanding, you can see what's scheduled. You can say, oh, okay, we need to extend or wait to do this, or we need to push this one back, right? And it's just it helps balance the resources and what the needs of what they need to get done, and not trip over each other.
That's a good thing, not tripping over each other.
Yeah.
Another question we have is, how does asset inventory relate to life cycle costs, levels of service, and user expectations?
Okay, read that one to me one more time. A lot of three parts of that one that are a little bit.
It's a complex question. How does asset inventory relate to the life cycle costs, the levels of service, and users' expectations?
Sure. Okay, so inventory itself, we like to look at that is the basis for any information we're going to have about an asset. So the inventory that exists, that's the lifeblood of what we're working with here, right? In asset management is, if I have inventory and it's active and in use, we could have inventory that is not in use as well, which is, I'll touch on in just a second, but active and in use inventory has a great impact on level of service, because if it's in there and historically we know what's going on, there are some things we will do are scheduled proactively based on the type of asset we're working with that will happen, that are going to provide a certain level of service that are just typical maintenance that needs to happen. However, if something's reported against an asset that needs a more prioritized look into it, those can be noted and flagged, which then pops them up in it as a dispatcher, or anybody who is organizing what might need to be done during a week can then have that planned and worked. And decisions can be made like, is this something that is something that needs to be just worked on, or do we have to do a replacement, etc. Now I'll talk about the other piece of inventory. Now we may have inventory that's not active, that is sitting in a building waiting for its opportunity to become active, right? But understanding what that is too, so that we have a good view of not only our active inventory, but inactive inventory, and how and what we have. So if something comes up that we have, there's not dead time, right? We have the ability to get those things ordered, secured, and put into active use where needed. We want to minimize the interruption of the expected use of a location as best as possible. And then we can do that through, of course, through proactive work, but then also taking that inventory and having a better view of what our inventory is, and understanding the demands on that inventory, so that we're not caught with, being out of something that's of high importance, right, for an area. It would be terrible to have to shut down a bathroom in a high volume park for in a summer weekend because we didn't have the pieces we need to take care of it.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question here from Brad. He asks, are you using Excel sheets to monitor your daily or weekly findings for park improvements and needs?
Are we using Excel sheets? No, we are not, of course. We would love to, if you are using Excel sheets, you're not alone. We talked to several groups that is the tool of choice, and it has a level of capability that you can, but we're absolutely more using database driven with APIs and things to call into our software, right? Because that's what we do for a business at AssetWorks, is make these things available. So we help locations and organizations and state governments and counties to get all their assets in there, get them organized in ways that if they're, for example, Parks and Rec, that they have the right things in them, have the right things to report, have the ability to enter data and information, and then create those different checklists, tests, things that make sense for them so that they can go through and organize it. We understand the need and use of spreadsheets to do that, but that's what really facilitates is the next evolution, which is into enterprise asset management type of software like we do at AssetWorks that not only works in the desktop environment, but then also has connections into mobile applications so that you can take it with you into the field and still have access to that data that you're working with on a daily basis and get your work done and reported in whatever modality works best for you, what you're doing.
Excellent. Thank you, Cameron. I think that covers all our time that we have today with you. We thank you guys for attending. Check out, there is a related content module here that you can look at if you want a copy of the slide deck, and there's some additional material there. And we will have this presentation available on our website shortly so that you can come back and revisit if you choose. And we thank you for your time today. Thank you, Cameron, for your time and the excellent presentation. And I hope everybody has a super week.
All right. Thanks, Emily. I appreciate Rec Management putting this together and having a chance to share these ideas with everybody.